Thanks for being here with us. Your talk is about cloud native Java development on Visual Studio. Is that right? Visual Studio Code. Let's be clear.
Yes.
Let's be clear. It's
Yeah.
a
So we're
three-word product, not a two-word product.
Yep, it makes a lot
Yeah.
of difference. So,
Excellent. All right. So you have 25 to 30 minutes top. About in 28 minutes, I will stop you hard. So if you can stop a little bit before that, I appreciate. And then we can have the next speaker also joining us for a chat. So all right, go ahead and get started. See you later. Thank you.
Sounds good.
yep, thank you. So, hello everyone. Good morning, good evening from wherever you're joining this session. So, it's a very good morning here right now, and I'm from India. My name is Mohit Suman, and I work as a senior product manager in developer experience at Red Hat. And joining with me, we have Roland Granberg, who's a principal software engineer and team lead within my team. And he mostly works on Visual Studio Code, Java development, Quarkus development. And this is something which we are going to focus today. That would be the idea we have around the 20-25 minutes we have with us. It will be few slides, but it will be mostly hands-on demo, which Roland will get us through. And I hope everyone will enjoy it. And if you have any questions, we are online and we will be very much happy to answer them. So moving onward, what we have currently today is what we do with Java development with Visual Studio Code. So giving a brief history of what we have, we started this project a few years back, and it was an initial collaboration which started with Red Hat, and Microsoft jumped into it. And then we have a lot of upstream community participating into it. And we have done a lot of releases. And a month back, we did 1.0 release of the extension. Currently, this extension has approximately 15 million downloads in Visual Studio Code Marketplace, and that's the #1 extension we have with respect to Java development. There was a survey which was done by Stack Overflow around it, and they mentioned that with respect to the developer choice for their IDE development, Visual Studio Code is approximately 71%. So that's a very huge number. And this is where we want to target the developers that, okay, if you are on Visual Studio Code, how your Java development experience can be enhanced, how can it be improved? And we have multiple tools for it, and which we will be getting into details further when Roland has some demos around it. So first, I will just let you go through what features we have with Java and Visual Studio Code. So it's mostly around that you can start your Java development from Java 1.5 to Java 18. So the latest release will have the support of Java 18. So you are good to go to try out the latest one. We have the code completion support. We also have the code lenses integration onto it. We have the Java extension pack support. So you want to do any cloud native development based on Quarkus and other applications, you can still integrate with them. We have a very enhanced support for Quarkus, which we are going to show in the demo. And I assume that whatever talks we have in JDConf, like in yesterday and today, we have heard a lot about Quarkus. And this is something which is very interesting for everyone who is working in the world of Java development environment. We also have a support for Gradle, Kotlin, and some of the code source refactoring and other stuffs, which I think will be much, much easier when we see the demos. So I won't take a lot of time on the slides because I feel the demos are much more easier for us to understand what the workflow is. One of the important part of cloud native Java development is we have the journey starts from a local IDE extension, right? So like you start your applications from a local workspace, and then you want them to be deployed in a cloud native environment. And that can be an OpenShift environment, that can be an Azure environment, or whatever cloud native cluster you want to have. So you basically containerize it and you deploy it. So the first step is to have that support of your framework, of your tooling, basically within your IDE. And this is where the Java extensions come into picture. The second workflow is once you start your developer experience, how we need to make sure that you understand how your workloads are modernized, how you can deploy them quickly with one-step clicks. It's not that you have to learn all the nomenclatures. It's very simple. You have a command on the extension that deploy to OpenShift. Let's say you're connected to an OpenShift cluster, and that's it. Everything will be automatically done. The builds and pods will be running, and we will have all the scenarios there. Now, the ecosystem around this Java development is consists of multiple extensions like debugger for Java, test runner for Java, project manager for Java, and Maven for Java. We have a very great collaboration with Red Hat and Microsoft, and we are actively working on this scenario so that we provide a lot of good awareness around the Java development. And moving forward, one of the most important thing currently what we support with cloud native development is the first one is to transform your applications. Let's say you have a Java application and you want that to be deployed to a cluster. So the first important factor is the extension should allow you to work with those scenarios. And once the scenarios are defined, you need to have your infrastructure ready. So the ID extensions provides you that benefit of your infrastructure with respect to that. And once the infrastructure is ready, you already have the environment done. So either that can be any Kubernetes environment. For example, we will be talking about OpenShift and or also Azure. And to understand that, we quickly deploy that onto any hybrid cloud infrastructure. So these are some of the key ingredients what we have with cloud native development. And I'll pass on to Roland further just to explain what we have with extensions and how we do with extension packs. And he will be guiding us through all the demos. So I'll pass on to Roland. Happy to take over.
Sure. So I figure that my screen is probably being shown right now. But if it's not, just give me a heads up and let me know. But as Mohit said, the core of everything is really VS Code Java. And so what I really like to demonstrate in some of the time that I have is just some of the capabilities we have with VS Code Java, just on a local sort of context. And then we'll slowly build up and get into things like VS Code Quarkus and even deploying to an OpenShift environment. So my goal here is not so you remember a particular key binding or any particular feature, but just feel motivated to kind of try these things out and see that with VS Code Java being the base and with VS Code extensions, it really is possible to open up a lot of interesting workflows and deployments. So as I mentioned before, this is all starting with the language support for Java. Now, the easiest way to get this is obviously on the VS Code Marketplace. You can also get it at OpenVSX. There's many ways. There are some nicer ways as well. So for example, there's something called the Java Extension Pack, as I think Mohit quickly mentioned. And this is just an aggregation of various useful extensions in addition to the Java language support. So we've got debugger support for Java. We've got test runners in telecode as well. Maven support. So not Maven build support, but I guess more Maven build support on top of the already existing one in Java. And some project manager for Java support, which is essentially some nice UIs to make some things a little easier. So certain compiler options, certain formatter options, just make them a little easier to access. So this is one way of getting all of these great things all in one. And in addition to that, I'll be showing Quarkus, the Quarkus tooling, which is essentially built upon VS Code Java and microprofile. So it's a smaller extension as well, which provides that. So these are all the tools that I'll be talking about. And now that we pretty much have an empty workspace, let's actually go through the trouble of importing something. So we can do it through just clicking here on Open Folder. You can also just do Control-KO. And we'll go to Sample Projects, and we'll open up a JSON example. So there's a couple of different types of projects that are supported. So we support Maven, we support Gradle, and those are really straightforward. You just import them and everything just sort of loads and builds as you'd expect. A third type that we support is called an unmanaged or invisible project. And the basic idea behind this is you don't have a fully fledged project. You got some source files, you have some folders, maybe you have some libraries you want to use. You want something to work. And so this is very much the kind of project that we also support. So I'll just quickly click on main.java just to get things started up. And immediately we can see that something's happening, a project's being opened up. We might see some errors, but that's fine. And there's just two things to mention. So number one, initially we had an issue where the actual runtime for this required Java 11 minimum. And so rightly so, a lot of users felt this was a bit of a no-go, obviously on top of their own personal environments, having to have a hard requirement on Java 11. So we will basically fix this just by ensuring that we embed our own version of Java, Java 17. And this is, it's essentially just J. It's hosted at the Eclipse Foundation. It's based on Adoptium. And this is essentially what we're using for the tooling. As far as the project runtime goes, you can use whatever you want. We make no restrictions on that. I think it is Java 1.5 to Java 18. We do support the latest. But obviously here you can see we have a couple of errors. The reason being, if we just hover at the bottom here, you see the build is completed, but we're using Java 1.8. So probably a good idea to change that. You can obviously go into settings. I use Control Dot. You can do so from File Preferences. And we're just going to, we can even do it this way, click here, Configure Java Runtimes. Quick note here, you can do it for all workspaces that you happen to open. So the settings are, I guess, cascaded everywhere, but you can also do it per workspace. So if you have a very specific configuration, you can, do it here. Nothing too groundbreaking. So all we're going to do is take this configuration. I've already got some JDKs configured here, and we'll set the default to Java 18, and our error should be going away. So quick note on that. Obviously, if you're using Maven or Gradle, you don't have to go through that. All of that will probably be configured for you in a POM file or settings.gradle file or build.gradle file. But again, if you're using an unmanaged project, maybe you want to have a little more control. So let me just close this. And we can see here we have a basic project that I guess is trying to emulate a kind of storefront where you have various items that might be for sale. So we have apparel, we have accessories. You can also see immediately we have your standard code lens support, which can be enabled, disabled, and parameter name hints. So for your method declarations, if there's a certain name associated with a parameter declaration, we can show it as a hint immediately. So these are just some of the features you can kind of just quickly see by default here. If we just click on the run code lens, we just get everything running as you'd expect. Nothing terribly complicated, and we've already got something working. Let's say we want to add to this very, very simple project. So you can imagine maybe we want to add another item that we sell. So let's add decor. So as an example, I'll just, actually, can I disable that? No. Okay, so I'll type in decor. I'll create a declaration for decor. And you can see here it's unresolved because it doesn't exist. So we can just activate code actions on it. By default, it is Control Dot, but I have a Control 1 for me. So if I activate it, you can see it here. You can create a class. Another addition we had recently is the ability to activate solutions for various problems, not necessarily on the problem itself. So what do I mean by that? I can activate the code action here and still solve the problem that's here. And this is just a setting called, I think it's quickfix.showAt. And by default, it's line. We could set it back to problem, and we would have to actually be on the problem itself to resolve it. But this is kind of convenient if you have a lot of issues and you don't necessarily want to move your cursor too much. So we've created decor. You can see immediately license headers are created and type headers as well. This is all configurable, file header settings. But the purpose of this is just to show you how easy it is to get things working and get a lot of the boilerplate code out of the way without having to do it manually. So let's create a couple fields. So for decor, obviously, maybe we have a room type. I'm actually not a fan of the description showing up, so I'll just disable it for now. But this is also configurable as well. So we'll create a room type. We'll, I guess decor can also have like a period in time where it's used, so maybe like a genre. And so let's say we want to create some getters and setters for these, but let's say we don't want to use records. We can activate immediately from the type declaration, generate getters and setters, use this little quick pick to do it that way. We can also do it directly from the field declaration itself, so create getter and setter. And finally, we can do it as we type, so get room type, get genre. So there's a lot of different options and a lot of different ways of activating them. There's not just one way to do things. And I just wanted to quickly show that. With that out of the way, let's also, I guess, extend item, because this is actually an item. We can see a couple of errors here. Number one, item is actually a, whoops. So if we peek at item, we can see it's actually a sealed class. So all that means is that we have to declare decor as final, non-sealed, or sealed. Let's go with final. And then we'll go into decor. And of course, we have to permit its usage. So we'll do it this way. So sealed classes, relatively new, just allow us to have more control over what particular classes can implement a particular other class. Just more control over inheritance. And so after we've done that, we immediately see we have an error here. And so the error is basically because for the switch expression, item can now take on the value of, so if we go to show type hierarchy, item can be an accessory, apparel, or decor, but we're only spanning apparel and accessory. So this is just informing us, hey, you want to add a default case, or maybe also write a case statement for decor. And we can obviously fill it in with more detail at a later time. So essentially what I'm trying to show here is that a lot of the standard features you'd expect out of an IDE are really here. This is all the language server just backing the extension, doing all of this work, most of the work, and providing a really pleasant editing experience with a lot of great hints and useful functionality. In terms of getting more libraries in here, or having a more advanced configuration, you can see that I have JSON here, but you also see here at the side, maybe you want to add Guava support. So I'll just quickly show you that we don't have com.google.com in the package itself. So all we have to do for now is we can simply drag this into the lib folder, move it in. And so the lib folder is just one of the default options. I'll go into how to configure it a little more later. And now we have com.google.com and .bx immediately. In addition to that, because the particular library is actually a Maven artifact, we can actually look into it and extract the necessary source information so that almost immediately we have access to the sources. So, right, these are comments. So it's not just scraping some, I guess, class file for all the declarations or anything like that. But yeah, it's really easy to configure this. If you wanted to get a little more complicated, what you can do is you can go into Java project reference libraries, do it in the workspace. And instead of just having just a standard lib, any folder in there under jar, any jar under lib, you can essentially have this object here where we have includes, excludes, and for sources, you can actually map each individual artifact to the corresponding source declaration. So you can get really complicated if that is what you choose. But again, if you have a Maven project or a Gradle project, this is all provided for you, and you don't really need to get into this kind of configuration. All right, so that covers pretty much libraries, source lookups, things like that. I guess it's also worth mentioning that there's a lot of useful key bindings. So let's say you want to organize your imports, Control-Shift-O. You can also actually enable a setting so that you organize your imports on every save. And then, of course, there's a setting in VS Code to save at a fixed interval. So you can very quickly really automate this if that is what you choose. But again, the goal of this is just to show VS Code Java has a lot of really great features, and there's a lot of things that are always coming up. Okay, so with that out of the way, I think it's time to move up to Quarkus. So again, I'll just be showing a very basic Quarkus project, and hopefully I can show you the nice integration between Java, VS Code Quarkus, and at the end as well, OpenShift. So again, I'll open up a folder, and I'll open up Quarkus Pet Clinic. It's a very basic project. And as before, the moment I import it, checking for Java projects, check details, it should start to import. Okay, so it's complete. And since I usually have trouble finding the exact source file, it's nice to just bring up welcome resource. This is just the main page for the pet clinic application. It's just a veterinary application for various pets and things like that. So let's say I have this application and I'd like to, just for this demonstration, simulate it's under heavy load. Maybe I haven't done everything asynchronously that should be. So on the main page, it takes a little while for things to come up, let's put it that way. So I'll put a thread.sleep as one does. And I'll just remove this on the welcome page. And so we'll just right-click or click here, and we'll click on debug Quarkus. And so the Maven build should be starting here. It might take a little bit of time, but you can easily follow it, look for any errors, and get notifications when it's up. Okay, so I see the stacks there, threads. Let's see for the code lines, and you should see that the proper endpoint for these methods have actually been injected. Again, this is just support within Quarkus. Actually, I believe it's microprofile to do this. And so we'll just click on this. And you see there's a 3-second delay, and then we see the page. So if we do it again, maybe I should make this a little bigger. But yeah, essentially, we're just seeing the 3-second delay. Let's say we'd like to solve this issue. So I'll just disconnect this for now. One really simple way to do this is with caching. So all we're going to do here is we're going to add an extension to the current project. It's not a Gradle project, it's actually a Maven project, as you probably saw. So essentially, this is just modifying the POMs. And so we're going to add the cache extension. And that is the only extension we'll be adding. And we can see it's been added. Now that we have the cache in there, we'll just use the cache result annotation. And this is going to allow us to cache the return value or values of this method. And we can even set a cache name here to denote this particular cache in case we'd like to configure it at a later time. So let's call it welcome cache. And we can actually just move into the application.properties for this project. And you can see we have like a bunch of other configurations here. So this is generally the place where you would configure things. And you can see that the welcome cache is detected. And actually, I do want a description this time. So obviously, we can set cache expiry, initial capacity, maximum capacity. We have the capability to do all this. And it's all detected based on the state of your source file. But default options should be fine for what we need. So all we're going to do now is simply redeploy. So we'll debug Quarkus again. And it should be coming up pretty soon. There we go. All right, so I should be seeing the code lens fairly soon now. There we go. So I'll just click on this. It took its sweet time coming up. So, you saw a 3-second delay the first time, but the second time it's instantaneous. So this is essentially just cache result in action. So I just wanted to show a simple example of some basic integration that exists, and then, debugging it as a Quarkus application. So this is all local. But as it happens, let's take a more complicated example as the last step. So I also have VS Code OpenShift tools installed. So if I go here, I have already logged into a cluster, and don't worry about the error message. It could just be that my particular cluster has some limited set of permissions, so I don't see everything, but it's fine. Yeah, I've logged into a cluster essentially just to make life a little easier so I don't have to input the password. So all we're going to do here is, we already have our project. I'm just going to right-click, and I like to create a new component. We'll call it maybe Pet Clinic App, or My Pet Clinic App. A context folder, it's just the folder we have open, and the component name, Quarkus Pet Clinic. That sounds reasonable. So we'll hit enter. For component type, I think it's just a Java Quarkus project, so that seems reasonable. And then we'll start. Actually, yeah. So the component's been created. I do need to do one thing. I apologize for this, but I will bring up the dev file. Before deploying, because the build does require a bit of resource, instead of the 512 megabytes, I will use 1 gigabyte. But that is the only change I'll be making. And so after I've made that change, I can, push through here, or I can just, open up the welcome resource again and simply push from this big red button. Okay. So I'll deploy. So this process should take a little while. So while it's loading, and while maybe you're just watching as it's loading, maybe I can talk about some features that are coming up in VS Code Java. So we are actually planning to do the VS Code Java 1.6.0 release. This comes with JDTLS 1.11.0. For this release, most of the new features in there are actually around signature help. So the idea is, when you're doing any form of code completion and you're just struggling within the parameters, trying to figure them out, it's nice to have a little pop-up that tells you, this parameter is a string, this parameter, is a JSON object. So we've done a lot of work to just improve the corner cases there and make it a lot easier. There's a lot of work that's being done to improve the performance, especially of completions, particularly around constructors, or just general performance of completions. There's a lot of good work that's been done around that. Finally, a lot of work around just handling the size of the workspace folder. So as you can imagine, when you load a project, we have to index a lot of libraries if your project is very large, and we index them so its lookups are faster. The problem with that is, the index is huge. It can get really large. So we've added a lot of capabilities around detecting workspaces that maybe haven't had their indices accessed in a while, and just cleaning those things up, just so it's easier for users and they don't wake up to a workspace folder that's many, many gigabytes in size. So it looks like this should have deployed by now. And so what we can do now is we can switch to the OpenShift view. Yeah, so it shows up as pushed here. And so I'll just right-click on this, and I'll go to Open in Browser. Looks like a 3-second delay. Whoops, okay. It'll take sometimes a little bit of time to show up. Hold on. There we go. It was just feeling a little shy, that's all. But you notice there was a 3-second delay. And so now, if I hit enter, it's instantaneous. So it really is the code that we just worked on locally deployed instance. I know it's a very simple example, but my goal is really with all of this to motivate you, try these things out, file issues if you find something you're not particularly happy with, but also just show you what is possible just with VS Code Java at its base. Yeah, there's a lot of other extensions that are contributing their own build systems. I believe there's probably a project that's doing Bazel-based build. And I'm aware of another project that's doing PDE, so Eclipse plugin development environment builds within VS Code. So you can actually develop Eclipse plugins, or at least play around with them in VS Code.
Cool. Yeah, that is interesting. I love Visual Studio Code. I'm biased. I like Quarkus. I think Quarkus is pretty cool. I like the Quarkus dev mode very much, and I'm excited to see this. And this whole demo makes me have chills. Like, this is awesome. So thank you so much for showing that. Can you just put this slide on full screen mode here so that we can have this on the stream? Yeah, if people want to follow, well, you go ahead, Roland. You talk about it. It's your slide. Sorry.
Yeah. So thanks for reminding me about the slide. I think it's the two, I guess, URLs you're seeing here is for the VS Code Java project itself. So this is the extension, and the VS Code Quarkus project. If you have issues, generally this is the best way of going about getting, your issue filed. And obviously the Twitter page for VS Code Java and Java at Microsoft. It goes without saying that especially for VS Code Java, it wouldn't be possible without a lot of contributions from some really great folks at Microsoft who help us out with a lot and really make it pleasant to develop on this. So huge
Awesome.
thanks to them.
Thank you so much. Roland,